Okay, so we're going to read the third Gosho today from Volume 5 of Teachings for Victory. What? Okay. And the bottom line is that it's going to be the Embankments of Faith, and that's a Gosho on page 625 of Volume 1. Remember last week last time we were together 2 weeks ago, I was answering a question for Dan and Eric Rogers, right?
Right.
Yep.
Okay, and so mystically the Gohonzon led me to this passage that I just wanted to put as a PS to what I had said at the last meeting to Dan and Eric as far as the precepts issue. And, I talk about a lot of stuff sometimes without being able to go directly to the Gosho where it says it. And then so when I find it, it's always like, I could have had. Okay, so there's a paragraph on page 481 of the Gosho called the Teaching, Practice, and Proof. Now, we just read that 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago, whatever. Okay, so this paragraph was read at that point in time, and Dan and Eric, you should be aware that that was already expressed. But let me reread this again so we all understand this precept of the golden chalice, okay? Or the diamond chalice, precept of the diamond chalice. It says on page 481, second column, first full paragraph. This is a very long paragraph that will go all the way over to 482. It says, the adherents of the precept school do violence to the precepts that exceeds even the devastation of a crumbling mountain or a flooding river. Far from attaining Buddhahood, they will not even be reborn in the world of human or heavenly beings. The great teacher Myolo states, if one observes but a single precept, one will be born a human being. But if one breaks even a single precept, one will instead fall into the three evil paths. Who among Nisho's followers in the precept school embraces even one of the prohibitions set forth in the observance for the precept sutra, the meditation on the correct teaching sutra, and other sutras, or truly observes the rules of discipline expounded in the Hinayana and Mahayana sutras, such as the Agama? Without doubt, they are all destined to fall into the three evil paths or even sink into the hell of incessant suffering. How pitiful they are! You should tell them so and reproach them. You should tell them so and reproach them by citing the Treasure Tower chapter's explanation of what observing the precepts and practicing the rules of discipline truly means. Then, pausing briefly, tell them that the 5 characters of Myoho Rengekyo, the heart of the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra, contain the benefit amassed through the countless practices and meritorious deeds of all Buddhas throughout the 3 existences. Then how can these 5 characters not include the benefits obtained by observing all of the Buddha's precepts? Once the practitioner embraces this perfectly endowed, wonderful precept, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is what he's talking about, obviously, he cannot break it because you've opened the door to hearing the name and the words of the truth, right? You're on the path. You can't go back on that. He's saying, once the practitioner embraces this perfectly endowed, wonderful precept, he cannot break it, even if he should try. So there's nothing you can possibly do to set you back to zero, okay? It is therefore called the precept of the diamond chalice. Thank you for somebody remembering to do that. Only by observing this wonderful precept. And how do we observe this wonderful precept? We chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's all we do, okay? By observing this wonderful precept, have the Buddhas of the 3 existences become Buddhas, endowed with the 3 bodies, the Dharma body, the reward body, and the manifested body, which are each without beginning or end, which means they're infinite in each direction. Kuan, right? Okay. The great teacher, it's the original state. There's no beginning to the original state, right? Even though it's called the original state. The great teacher Tentai wrote of this. In the various teachings, he, the Buddha, kept this secret and did not transmit it. Now in the latter day of the law, any person, whether wise or ignorant, okay, so knowing what the sutras say or not knowing what the sutras say, priest or lay believer, or of high or low position, who embraces Myoho Renge-kyo and practices it in accordance with the Buddha's teaching, cannot fail to gain the fruit of Buddhahood. For precisely this reason, In reference to the Votary Lotus Sutra in the impure and evil age after the Buddha's passing, the sutra declares, such a person assuredly and without doubt will attain the Buddha way. On the other hand, those who practice the provisional teachings against the admonition of Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions, as is expressed in the Lotus Sutra and the Nirvana Sutra, will definitely fall into the hell of incessant suffering. Now that so wondrous a precept as the precept of the diamond chalice, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, now that so wondrous a precept has been revealed, none of the precepts expounded in the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings or in the theoretical teaching have the slightest power to benefit people. Since they provide not the slightest benefit, it is totally useless to observe them even for a single day. So if you think you're going to stop eating fish or you're going to become a vegetarian and that's going to change your karma, not really. Not really. Not really. Not if you're doing it from a perception of it being precepts. Now, if it's to avoid animal fats or you've become vegan and it's something that you're doing out of a sense of wanting to respond to, the environment or to other living, that's cool. But there's no such precept as being a vegetarian in the latter day of the law. All right? There's no such. These are all old. That's why I called it the Old Testament when I was talking about it before. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Gosha that we're studying today, which is on 625, the Embankments of Faith. And once again, just because it's easy and accessible and right across it, on upholding faith in the Gohonzon, dear. On upholding faith in the Gohonzon. I'm going to read that because it's a very short Gosha, okay? It says, I have received the various the background, page 624, because we're going to start on 625 for Embankments of Faith. He says, this letter was written at Minobu in the 8th month of the first year of Kinji to the lay nun Myoshin, a believer who had lived in Nishiyama, in the Fuji district of Suruga province. It explains that the Gohonzon is the essence of the Lotus Sutra and the eye of all the scriptures. The Gohonzon or mandala embodies the reality of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, implicit in the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Implicit, not revealed on the surface. Thus, the Gohonzon is the essence of the Lotus Sutra that Daishonin qualifies, okay? And the Lotus Sutra is the eye of all the teachings of Shakyamuni. Therefore, the Gohonzon, the essence of the Lotus Sutra, is also the eye of all the scriptures. So let me just read this real quick, this Gosha to Nishiyama. He says, I have received the various articles that you so kindly sent. I am entrusting you with a Gohonzon for the protection of your young child. This Gohonzon is the essence of the Lotus Sutra and the eye of all the scriptures. It is like the sun and the moon in the heavens, a great ruler on the earth, the heart in a human being, the wish-granting jewel among treasures, and the pillar of a house. So, that's how we should view the Gohonzon. That's how it's being described by the Daishonin as he's bestowing upon someone one that he himself has inscribed, right? This Gohonzon is the essence of the Lotus Sutra, the eye of all the scriptures. It is like the sun and the moon in the heavens, a great ruler on the earth, the heart of a human being, the wish-granting jewel among treasures, and the pillar of a house. When we have this mandala with us, and essentially that means it's awakened in our life, right? It is a rule that all the Buddhas and gods will gather around and watch over us, protecting us like a shadow day and night, just as warriors guard their ruler, as parents love their children, as fish rely on water, as trees and grasses crave rain, and as birds depend on trees. You must trust it with all your heart. And so then what does that mean? What is he telling you in that previous? He says he's going to protect you 24/7. Okay? And he's telling you to trust it with all your heart. And so then what does it mean when you run into an obstacle, when you feel like you haven't been protected? You are being protected. You are being protected. There is nothing that you're going to encounter that you can't overcome with Daimoku to the Gohonzon. Okay? If there was something that was so difficult to overcome, you would be protected from it. Do you understand? There's nothing in your path to Buddhahood that's strong enough to obscure the power of your life. You follow? All right, so going on to the Embankments of Faith, page 625. It's also a short go-show. The background is on page 627. I'll continue. Let me some water. I'm a little hyped, a little coffee today, huh? This letter is dated the 3rd day of the 9th month with no year indicated, though it is believed to be 1275, a year and a half after the Daishonen's return from exile on Sado Island. It is addressed to the lay nun Shinichi, the wife of Abutsubo. Everybody remembers Abutsubo from Sado Island, right? All right. This letter is a reply to a question the lay nun has asked about the effects of different degrees of slander against the correct teaching. This is a wonderful go-show because it just falls right into everything else we've been talking about for the last 2 months. The Daishonin says, if a believer's offense is slight, overlook it and lead that person to obtain benefits. If it is serious, encourage him to strengthen his faith so that he can expiate the sin. But attention should be paid to his warning. Even minor slanders may lead to serious ones, and then the effects one must suffer would be far worse. The Daishonin praises the lay nun Shinichi for asking a question about slandering the correct teaching. And you all know I'm a little on that, right? It's very important for me to always make that distinction. The Daishonin is going to qualify that right now. This is so cool of a go-show, and then President Keita's lecture is like off the charts. Okay, here we go, page 625. He says to Shinichi, in your letter, you asked how the retribution varies according to the degree of slander against the correct teaching. To begin with, the Lotus Sutra was taught to lead all living beings to the Buddha way. Only those who have faith in it, however, attain Buddhahood. Those who slander it fall into the great citadel of hell of incessant suffering. And that's why when we see somebody slandering, we've got to correct them because we're having no mercy. We're having no compassion in the absence of that. He says, then we become a Buddha. He's going to talk about Chang'an's thing again. You know, if you don't ask the slanderer, you're as guilty as they are. You've become an enemy of the law. He says, those who slander it fall into the great citadel of hell of incessant suffering. As the sutra states, if a person fails to have faith but instead slanders this sutra, immediately he will destroy all the seeds for becoming a Buddha in this world. When his life comes to an end, he will enter the Avicii hell. There are many degrees of slander that Daishonin qualifies to Shinichi. Shallow and profound, slight and heavy. Even among those who embrace the Lotus Sutra. Now think about this, because we all embrace the Lotus Sutra because we embrace the Gohonzon, right? Okay. Even among those who embrace the Lotus Sutra, because when he says Lotus Sutra again, he's talking about the Gohonzon here, all right? Even among those who embrace the Lotus Sutra, very few uphold it steadfastly, both in mind and in deed. Would you all agree with that? I would agree with that. I would agree with that, okay? That's why we need that precept of the diamond chalice, okay? Few are the practitioners who are able to uphold this sutra, but those who do will not suffer serious retribution even if they have committed minor offenses. Okay? So when we screw up, we're kind of covered. We have a diminished impact on our karma. All right? I'll say it again. But those who do uphold this sutra will not suffer serious retribution even if they have committed minor offenses against the sutra, because they're in a process daily of purifying their life through daimoku to the Gohonzon. That's the point. That's that protection like warriors. You're the one that provides that protection. It's not a bunch of spooky spirits that are looking down and going, oh, he's good, I'm going to protect him. No, it's your life that attracts that protection. He says, their strong faith, continuing first column, page 625, their strong faith expiates their offenses as surely as a flood extinguishes tiny fires. So that's, I think, pretty overwhelming kind of, picture of what the circumstance is. He continues on the first column, last paragraph, page 625. The Nirvana Sutra states, if even a good monk sees someone destroying the teaching and disregards him, failing to reproach him, to oust him, or to punish him for his offense, then you should realize that that monk is betraying the Buddha's teachings. But if he ousts the destroyer of the law, reproaches him, or punishes him, then he is my disciple and a true voice hearer. And that's again what Chang'an was quoting when he said the same quote. And it qualifies to you. You've got to admonish people that slander the law. This admonition urged me on. So he's saying, the Nirvana Sutra says this. And because I studied Tintai's teachings and I know what where Chang'an was coming from, I became aware of this part of the sutra, of the lotus. Okay, he says, of the perfect teaching, because this is from the Nirvana. So he says, this admonition urged me on. Now, frankly, his admonitions urge me on. Okay, why do I always never let slander pass? Because I'm trying to be dogmatic? No, because it's something very specific, and I never really do it just for the sake of, oh, you're doing something wrong. It's diminishing the law, okay, is when I usually speak up. If I see anything that somehow abrogates it from the supreme teaching, then I must say, oh, but it is the supreme teaching. Okay, so he says, this admonition urged me on, and I spoke out against slander in spite of the various persecutions I faced, because I would have become an enemy of the Buddha's teaching if I had not. Now, when I read that, that means I will too, right? I have to live according to the mind of Nichiren. If the mind of Nichiren realized this is an important aspect, and he's sharing it with Shinichi, who's asking about slander, then this is a teaching directly to me to embrace and impart and implement in my daily life, right? As it is for all of us. This admonition urged me on, and I spoke out against slander in spite of the various persecutions I faced, because I would have become an enemy of the Buddha's teachings if I had not. So we can't let anything make us be afraid to speak up and speak the truth. We shouldn't worry about what will they think about us if we say something. That's not as important as speaking the truth. Okay? He says slander can be either, by the way, that's also how you get rid of your own slander. When you defeat slander, you overcome your own. Slander can be either minor or serious, however, and sometimes we should overlook it rather than attack it. And I decided I would share a story as part of my explanation of what we're reading here. When my wife first started chanting, and I mean actually embracing the Gohonzon, sitting down and chanting Daimoku with me when we would do Gongyo, sometimes she would strike a very casual, comfortable pose. She might even stick her feet up in her chair or whatever. I knew it had taken so much to get her to the point of really beginning to chant and to seek, okay, that to go into a bunch of trying to, I mentioned it as soon as I said, you really shouldn't have your feet up, but it's like, why? My comfort is like, I'm going to the trouble. I had no real good explanation. Okay, let's drop it. Just keep chanting, okay? That's what he's trying to talk about, okay? Because what he's going to say here, slander can be either minor or serious, however, and sometimes we should overlook it rather than attack it. The true word in Tendai schools slander the Lotus Sutra and should be severely rebuked. We do it then. But without great wisdom, it is hard to differentiate correctly between their doctrines and the teachings that Nichiren spreads. Therefore, at times we refrain from attacking them, just as I did on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. Whether or not we speak out, it will be difficult for those who have committed the grave error of slander to avoid retribution. On seeing, hearing, and making no attempt to stop slander that, if we spoke out, could be avoided, destroys our gifts of sight and hearing and is utterly merciless. Do you understand what he's saying there? Okay, because here's the deal. He's going to say here in a minute. What actually happens is in minor slander, they just stop doing it on their own. You don't have to give them a hard time, which is exactly what happened with her. She just, I don't know why. Her demeanor changed in front of the Gohonzon as she continued to practice and develop her faith. All right. So that's what this is saying. We don't have to worry about little things. This is going to explain exactly what slander is as we get into it, though. He says, our seeing, hearing, and making no attempt to stop slander that, if we spoke out, could be avoided, destroys our gifts of sight and hearing and is utterly merciless. So when we're utterly merciless by not correcting slander, we impact ourselves negatively. We may not have said something out of fear of not wanting to rock the boat or have people say something, but in fact, we're not helping anybody, including ourselves, in that circumstance. Everybody's with me? Mm-hmm. All right. So Chang'an writes, if one befriends another person, but lacks the mercy to correct him, one is in fact his enemy. The consequences of a grave offense are extremely difficult to erase. And that's why you've got to understand when you're making that determination, if you don't correct it early on and you just let it accumulate without ever saying anything again, you're creating a problem for them, because their consequence it's increasing as they continue to slander more and more and more. Chang'an writes in the very bottom of 625, if one befriends another person but lacks the mercy to correct him, one is in fact his enemy. So when I correct people, I'm trying to be your friend. I'm not trying to show you how much I know. The consequences of a grave offense are extremely difficult to erase. That's what we're trying to avoid. The most important thing is to continually strengthen our wish to benefit others. What would that be? The most important thing is to continually strengthen our wish to benefit others. What is that? Compassion. The most important thing is to continually strengthen our capacity to express compassion through wisdom. How are you able to correct the slanderer? Through wisdom. Okay? How can you understand what slander is without study? Who defines it? It's not up to you. It's not up to me. That's why it's not up to me. All right? When a person's offense is minor, admonishment is sometimes called for, because we don't want this thing to compound. But at other times it may be unnecessary, for there are those who may correct themselves without being told. All right? Reprove a person for slander when necessary, so that you can forestall for both of you the consequences of an offense. Then you should forgive that person. You don't walk around like, boy, you didn't know shit, or boy, I know, boy, don't you wish you had a practice in faith like me? No, that's not the point. He says, then you should forgive that person. The point is that even minor slanders may lead to serious ones. That's why we don't look at them, oh, that's minor, never mind. Do you understand? There has to be this process of discernment. Who are you talking to? Who are you encouraging? What's the level of their slander, okay? The point is that even minor slanders may lead to serious ones, and then the effects one must suffer would be far worse. This is what Chang'an means when he writes, one who rids the offender of evil by reproaching them for their slander and correcting them is acting as his parent. Just like a parent, we try to teach our kids what the right way to live is. Okay, it's where you're behaving as a parent would. Many such examples of slander are also found among Nichiren's disciples and lay believers. I am sure that you have heard about the lay priest Ichuna Sawa. Privately, he is considered one of Nichiren's followers, but publicly he still remains in the Nembutsu school. What should be done about his next life? Now, this is where the Daishonin lived when he was on Sado Island, when he got upgraded from the hut with all the holes in it and the snow and all that, right? He says, what should be done about his next life? Nevertheless, I have presented him with the 10 volumes of the Lotus Sutra. Even though I know he's doing this, because of my relationship with him, I'm trying to help him out. So that Daishonin continues. First column on page 626. Strengthen your faith now more than ever, as he has said many times to many people. Anyone who teaches the principles of Buddhism to others, so he's talking about all of us, is bound to incur hatred from men and women, priests and nuns. So if you're not getting any hatred, then you're probably not preaching, frankly speaking. No, that is the case. Let them say what they will. Entrust yourself to the golden teachings of the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha, Tiantai, Myolo, Dingyo, and Chang'an. This is what is signified by the expression, practicing according to the Buddhist teachings. The Lotus Sutra reads, if in that fearful age, now the latter day, one can preach this sutra even for a moment, one will deserve to receive alms from all heavenly and human beings. This passage explains that in the evil age of the latter day of the law, when evil persons stained by the three poisons prevail, anyone who believes in and upholds the correct teaching, even for a short time, will receive offerings from heavenly and human beings. It's called benefit. It's called good fortune. It's called making corrective changes in your life that bring you happiness and satisfaction. All right? It's the benefit of practice. Now you should make a great vow and pray for your next life. So what is he basically saying there? Now you should embrace this idea that you're a bodhisattva of the earth, because bodhisattvas of the earth are the ones that make the great vow. What is the great vow? It's for widespread propagation. Okay, the vow is to uphold the law and to never go tighten, to never, to never let anything overcome your faith. Now you should make a great vow and pray for your next life. I don't know how much of you, do you guys pray for your next life? Mm-hmm. You don't ever think about your next life? I do all the time. Mm. Just between you and me. The stuff that's not practical for me, that I'm too old for. Yeah, I'm always thinking about it. I'm not thinking about it, I'll be around again. If you are disbelieving or slander the correct teaching, even in the slightest, you will certainly fall into the great citadel of the hell of incessant suffering. Suppose there is a ship, and this is where he's going to get into the embankments here. Suppose there is a ship that sails on the open sea. Though the ship is stoutly built, if it is flooded by a leak, just a little leak, those on the ship are sure to drown together. Though the embankment between rice fields is firm, if there is an anthole in it, then surely in the long run it will not remain full of water. Bail the sea, he's saying to us, bail the seawater of slander and disbelief out of the ship of your life and solidify the embankments of your faith. If a believer's offense is slight, overlook it and lead that person to obtain benefits. If it is serious, encourage him to strengthen his faith so that he can expiate the sin. You are indeed an unusual woman, since you asked me to explain the effects of various degrees of slander. You are indeed an unusual woman, since you asked me to explain the various effects of the various degrees of slander. You are every bit as praiseworthy as the Dragon King's daughter when you said, I unfold the doctrines of the great vehicle to rescue living beings from suffering. The Lotus Sutra reads, if one can ask about its meaning, that will be difficult indeed. There are very few people who inquire about the meaning of the Lotus Sutra. Always be determined to denounce slander against the correct teaching to the best of your ability. When he says correct teaching, he's talking about his teaching for the latter day. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It is indeed wonderful that you should be helping me reveal my teachings. He's saying that to us too. It is indeed wonderful that you should be helping me reveal my teachings. Respectfully, Nichiren, the third day of the 9th month, replied to the lay nun and wife of Abutsabo. Okay, so that was the Gosho. I'm spinning along here pretty quick. It's about a 12-page lecture. So let's go ahead and get started. The Embankments of Faith is on page 33 of Teachings for Victory, Volume 5. We've already just read the entire Gosha, so forget the stuff in the gray boxes. Starting on page 35, lecture. On a clear California day in February 1990, I spoke with the American journalist Norman Cousins. I will never forget his words on that occasion, which reflected his belief in the importance of overcoming the feelings of powerlessness and cynicism that can take root in the human heart. And all of us have experienced that, right? What is the greatest human tragedy? It is not, what is the greatest human tragedy is the question. It is not death per se. The real tragedy is death in life, though your body survives. Something important inside you has perished. That something important inside you could be summed up as a solid belief in one's own incredible inner potential. Mr. Cousins continued, with a heartfelt message for youth. By virtue of our birth as human beings, we have a noble duty that we share with all others. That is to believe in people and to trust each other. When, for example, we are faced with an unavoidable tragedy, though in our anguish we may temporarily lose sight of the meaning of life, we must never forget to believe in people, which is what it means to be a human being. What is important is how greatly you affirm the value and irreplaceable gift of life. What is important is how greatly you affirm and value the irreplaceable gift of life. You must never devalue the lives and feelings of others. Your supreme goal must be mutual acceptance, and you must never abandon that most noble human sentiment, trust. Now, that was Daisaku Ikeda quoting Norman Cousins. That's who just said all this. This guy was the editor of the Saturday Evening Post. It was a periodical. He was obviously a man of great wisdom. Okay, and what he's saying is basic humanism as it relates to human beings, but is a predication of the teaching of Nichiren Daishonin as well. Okay, so I'm going to reread that. All right. He starts on page 35. What is the greatest human tragedy? It is not death per se. The real tragedy is death in life, though your body survives. Something important inside you has perished. What could that be for us? Our seeking spirit. Our faith, obviously, but our seeking spirit is the most important thing, because you can have faith and stop seeking and you will stop advancing. Okay? And the whole point is you must make this attempt to advance throughout your life. There's a real liability if you think you've practiced 25 or 30 years. Okay? Because I know I went through this. After you've practiced 20 years, you think that's a long damn time. I must know pretty much everything. I've shakubuku'd a bunch of people. You know, I've gone to 1,000 meetings. I've been to Taisekuji a few times. You know, I've met President Ikeda. I could go on and on and on. Okay, it's when you think you know everything that you're really in trouble. That's when you stop reading this. You don't need to read Teachings for Victory. You already know what all the Goshas say, right? There are tons of members that have been practicing 25 or 30 years. They don't read shit. They don't advance anything. Okay? That's what we're talking. What has perished? Your seeking spirit. Because if your faith were really alive, your seeking spirit would be too. Okay? All right, everybody's with me? All right, continuing. That something important inside you could be summed up as a solid belief in one's own incredible inner potential. Now, why did that just tie into what I just said? Why is it that we must never stop? We got to continue to advance. Because we believe that we're Buddhists. We believe in our Buddhahood, and we believe in the Buddhahood of others. That's something that we're working toward trying to accomplish, right? That's why he's saying that something important inside you could be summed up as a solid belief in one's own incredible inner potential. It could be summed up as a solid belief in one's own Buddha nature, that you are a Buddha exactly as you are, even though you know how flawed you are. Because being flawed has nothing to do with it, God damn it, at all. Okay, and President K is going to say that here too. All right. So then Mr. Cousins continued. By virtue of our birth as human beings, we have a noble duty that we share with all others. Now, Mr. Cousins isn't a Nichiren Shoshu Buddhist, but that's basically what Nichiren Daishonin has said about all mankind as well. Right? I mean, why do we jump up to try to shakabuku everybody? Just to make them part of our club? No, it's to eliminate their suffering. Okay? So the point is that by virtue of our birth as a human being, we're all bodhisattvas of the earth. That's what the Daishonin's teaching says. That's what he's also saying here without knowing what he's saying. That's why Daisaku Ikeda respoke it. That's the depth of what's really being said here, okay? By virtue of our birth as a human being, we have a noble duty that we share with all others to eliminate suffering and to bring wisdom and clarity into the lives of all others. That is, Kozen Rufu is what it is. That is to believe in people and to trust each other. To believe in people means to accept and perceive their Buddha nature and to trust that they have the capacity to reveal it. All right? When, for example, we are faced with an unavoidable tragedy, though in our anguish we may temporarily lose sight of the meaning of life, we may lose sight of the power of the law, what our mission is, we must never forget to believe in people, to believe in the teaching, to believe in human beings, which is what it means to be a human being, he's saying. Do you understand? Everything we're talking about is believing in human beings, right? What is important is how greatly you affirm and value the irreplaceable gift of life. We get a shot to do this right now, we know for sure, because we're sentient, we're conscious, we know we're alive. We can do this now. It's not putting it on a shelf and saying, well, next lifetime or someday. Do you understand? The importance of doing it now while you really know you can may be the payoff that makes you allowed to be able to do it again. What is important is how greatly you affirm the value and irreplaceable gift of life. You must never devalue the lives and feelings of others. That means you can never think, well, you're full of shit and worthless. Okay? You must always respect everyone. That's what that's saying. Your supreme goal must be mutual acceptance, and you must never abandon the most noble human sentiment, trust. Trust in your ability to become a Buddha. Trust in your ability to raise your life condition. Trust in your ability to perceive things that you don't in this moment. All right? Continuing on page 36, now that I'm done with Norman Cousins. Page 36, first column, respect for and trust in human beings. The essence of Nichiren Buddhism is respect for and trust in human beings, along with a belief in the infinite potential and preciousness of life. This is from President Ikeda. He says, that's why I just quoted Mr. Cousins, because what he said was absolutely the truth. Because of our strong faith in Nichiren Daishonin's teachings, we can advance joyfully on the hope-filled path of human revolution, a path of inner, personal transformation that leads to a change in the world around us. And you must understand, that's the whole point. How is Kosen Rufu achieved? We pacify the land through the propagation of the law. Okay? We propagate it to people, right? So it's the people that pacify the land. It's their life condition that's being reflected in the land in the first place. Because of our strong faith in Nichiren Daishonin's teachings, we can advance joyfully on the hope-filled path of human revolution, a path of interpersonal transformation that leads to a change in the world around us. All human beings embody the most noble state of life of Buddhahood and have the power and wisdom to realize happiness for themselves and others. So this isn't making a distinction of Soka Gakkai members. Okay? This is human beings. Shutting one's eyes to, doubting and denying this rich inherent potential is the source of fundamental distrust and powerlessness that casts such a dark pall over a contemporary society. Because if all the world's leaders and all the people of all the different countries of the world all respected one another truly, as this is talking about, there would be no wars, there would be no division, there would be no nothing of any kind of consequence. There would be a conflict. It'd just be cultural, and it would be respected. It would be cultural, respected. All right? He's saying, and so when we don't do that, when we start saying, oh, those Muslims, or oh, those Christians, or oh, those Buddhists, okay? When we start generalizing and putting people in a box rather than seeing them as human beings with this infinite potential, just like we do, they're exactly the same as us. There's no difference between them and us, no matter where they're from, no matter what they're like. There's still temporary gatherings of the 5 components, right? And they still somehow had the good fortune and karma to meet you, who's going to introduce them to the perfect teaching. So understand, if that can happen for them, if they meet a bodhisattva of the earth that opens the door, that says something about their karma right there. They're not such bad people, no matter how they may have appeared before you opened the door. They don't get the door opened if they're that bad. Do you understand? Okay. And they can seem to be very bad. I know from personal experience. They can seem to be very, very bad. Okay. They don't have to end up that way. He's saying, Nichiren's refutation, first full paragraph, second column, page 36. Nichiren's refutation of erroneous teachings that slandered the law also exemplified this struggle against the fundamental. We have a puppy dog on the loose in here, if you heard that. Nichiren's refutation of erroneous teachings that slandered the law also exemplified this struggle against the fundamental error of disbelief in human beings' potential for good. In this chapter, we will study the embankments of faith to learn about striving in Buddhist practice with unwavering belief in the nobility of human life. And that's page 36. I know we're a little short today, but it's going to take 2 weeks to do this, and I'll end up talking for 5 minutes if I don't stop now. So we're going to stop early today, and see you next week. We will continue the actual Gosho lecture, which really begins when he starts getting into the different parts of the passages next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.